There's a war being waged for your mind right now, and you don't even know you're on the battlefield. No one's shouting at you, threatening you, or forcing you to do anything. That's precisely what makes it so effective. Silent manipulation is the art of changing someone's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors without them realizing they're being influenced. It's happening in your relationships, at your workplace, through your screens, and sometimes, devastatingly, you're doing it to yourself. The most dangerous manipulators never look like manipulators. They look like caring friends, devoted partners, concerned colleagues, loving family members. They don't twirl mustaches or cackle evilly. They smile warmly while planting seeds of doubt. They offer help while fostering dependency. They express concern while eroding confidence. Their weapons aren't threats but suggestions, not demands but implications, not attacks but whispers that burrow into your psyche like psychological parasites. Silent manipulation works because it bypasses your conscious defenses. When someone attacks you directly, you resist. But when they plant an idea so subtly that you think it's your own, you embrace it. You become the enforcer of your own manipulation, doing the manipulator's work for them. You doubt yourself because you decided to. You change your behavior because you wanted to. You lose yourself piece by piece while thinking you're making free choices. Let me tell you about Sarah and her boyfriend, Mike. Mike never told Sarah she couldn't see her friends. He just got quiet when she mentioned them. Developed a headache when she had plans. Seemed sad when she came home happy from a girls' night. He'd say things like, "I just love spending time with you, but I understand if your friends are more important." Never a direct demand, never an ultimatum. Within 6 months, Sarah rarely saw her friends. If you asked her, she'd say she chose to spend more time with Mike because she wanted to. She had no idea she'd been programmed. The psychology of silent manipulation starts with intermittent reinforcement, the most powerful conditioning tool known to behavioral science. The manipulator doesn't always punish or always reward. They create an unpredictable pattern that keeps you constantly trying to figure out the rules. Sometimes they're warm, sometimes cold, sometimes pleased, sometimes disappointed. Your brain, desperate for patterns, becomes obsessed with cracking the code. You become addicted to the rare moments of approval, working harder and harder for rewards that come less and less frequently. Think about a slot machine. It doesn't pay out every time or never. It pays out randomly. This randomness creates addiction far more powerful than consistent reward. Silent manipulators are human slot machines. They've weaponized uncertainty, making you pull their lever again and again, hoping this time you'll hit the emotional jackpot of their full approval. Gaslighting is silent manipulation's nuclear weapon. It's not just lying, it's making you doubt your own perception of reality. "I never said that." "You're being too sensitive." "That didn't happen the way you remember." "You're imagining things." Slowly, systematically, the manipulator replaces your reality with theirs. You stop trusting your memory, your judgment, your feelings. You become dependent on them to tell you what's real. It's psychological murder, killing someone's sense of self while leaving their body intact. I watched this happen to a brilliant woman, a surgeon, whose husband convinced her she was losing her mind. He'd move her keys and deny it, tell her about conversations that never happened, change plans they'd made and insist she'd misremembered. She went from confident professional to someone who couldn't trust herself to remember if she'd eaten breakfast. She started writing everything down, recording conversations, doubting her own sanity. The manipulation was so subtle, so patient, that she never suspected him until she found his journal detailing the whole campaign. Silent manipulators are emotional archaeologists. They excavate your deepest insecurities and build their control on that foundation. They pay attention during your vulnerable moments, filing away every fear, every wound, every source of shame. Then they use this information like a surgeon uses a scalpel. Precise, deliberate cuts that don't look like attacks but feel like agony. Your mother who just worries about your weight, bringing it up through concerned observations about health. Your boss who believes in your potential while consistently implying you're not meeting it. Your friend who only wants the best for you, while subtly undermining every positive development in your life. They're not helping, they're harvesting your insecurities for future use. The silent treatment is a masterclass in manipulation without words. It's violence without touching, abandonment while staying present. The manipulator doesn't leave. That would be too clear, too decisive. Instead, they remain physically present, but emotionally absent, a ghost haunting your shared spaces. You're left begging for restoration of something you're not even sure you lost, apologizing for crimes you're not sure you committed. Children who grow up with silent treatment learn that love can be withdrawn without warning, that they must constantly monitor and manage others' emotions, that their worthiness of connection is conditional and revocable. They become adults primed for manipulation, already trained to chase unavailable people, already convinced that love requires endless effort to maintain. Triangulation is where silent manipulators bring in third parties to do their dirty work. They don't criticize you directly. They tell you how concerned others are about you. Mom thinks you're drinking too much. Everyone at work notices you've been slipping. My friends think you're controlling. These invisible armies of judgment make you feel surrounded, outnumbered, indefensible. You can't argue with ghosts, can't defend against anonymous accusations, can't fight an enemy you can't see. The beauty of triangulation is that it might be entirely fabricated. Those concerned others might have said nothing, might not even exist. But now you're paranoid, wondering what everyone really thinks, seeing judgment in every interaction. The manipulator becomes your only ally in a world they've convinced you is against you. Love bombing followed by devaluation is a silent manipulation classic. First, they overwhelm you with attention, affection, praise. You're perfect, amazing, everything they've ever wanted. Your brain floods with dopamine, oxytocin, all the feel-good chemicals. You're high on their love. Then gradually, the temperature changes. The praise becomes less frequent, then qualified, then criticized. But you remember the high, and you'll do anything to get it back. You start chasing the ghost of who they were in the beginning, not realizing that person never existed. That was the bait. This, the criticism, the coldness, the constant feeling of not being enough. This is the trap. But you blame yourself for the change. If only you could be who you were when they loved you so completely. You don't realize they're the one who changed, or rather, revealed who they always were. Silent manipulators weaponize responsibility. They're never accountable for anything, but somehow, everything is your fault. They don't say this directly. Instead, they sigh when problems arise. They look hurt, but claim to be fine. They develop mysterious illnesses during conflicts. They become sad rather than angry, disappointed rather than confrontational. You end up apologizing for making them feel bad about hurting you. You take responsibility for their emotions, their reactions, their life satisfaction. I knew a couple where the wife had trained the husband to manage her anxiety by never disagreeing with her. She never asked for this directly. She just became so distressed when contradicted that he learned to avoid it. Panic attacks, crying fits, days of depression, all triggered by disagreement. Within a year, he'd lost all his opinions, preferences, and eventually, his sense of self. She wasn't consciously manipulating him, but the effect was the same. Total control achieved through emotional terrorism. The moving goalposts technique ensures you never quite succeed. Just when you think you've met their standards, the standards change. You lose weight, now you need to tone up. You get promoted, now you're working too much. You spend more time with them, now you're clingy. You're always almost there, always just falling short, always one improvement away from their full approval. This keeps you in perpetual motion, too busy trying to please them to notice you're running on a treadmill to nowhere. Selective memory is a devastating form of silent manipulation. They remember every mistake you've ever made in vivid detail, but develop amnesia about their own failings. They forget promises they made, but remember ones you implied. They rewrite history in real time, editing out their cruelty and amplifying yours. Arguments become impossible because you're not even working from the same script. Silent manipulators are masters of plausible deniability. Everything they do can be explained away, justified, rationalized. The cutting remark was just a joke. The cruel behavior was stress. The deliberate sabotage was an accident. They operate in the gray area where nothing is quite bad enough to call abuse, but everything feels wrong. You're left constantly questioning whether you're overreacting, being too sensitive, imagining things. Induced conversation is where they manipulate you into bringing up topics they want to discuss. They won't directly accuse you of cheating, but they'll mention how their co-worker's partner cheated. They won't call you lazy, but they'll praise others' work ethic in pointed ways. They lead you to water and make you think you're thirsty. You end up defending yourself against accusations that were never technically made. The psychological load of silent manipulation is crushing. You're constantly analyzing, interpreting, predicting. What did that look mean? Why did they pause before responding? Are they upset? What did I do? Your mind becomes a full-time job of managing their emotions and reactions. You're exhausted not from what they do, but from trying to figure out what they're thinking, feeling, planning. Information control is crucial to silent manipulation. They withhold information you need, share information selectively, or flood you with so much information you can't process it. They tell you about the party after it's over. Mention the deadline when it's too late. Forget to relay important messages. Each instance seems like an innocent mistake, but the pattern creates a dependency. You need them to navigate life because somehow you're always missing crucial information. Silent manipulators often use your strengths against you. Empathetic? They become perpetual victims needing rescue. Logical? They drag you into endless circular arguments. Generous? They develop constant needs. Independent? They make you prove it by handling everything alone. They identify what you're proud of and turn it into a weapon against you. The trauma bond created by silent manipulation is incredibly strong. The unpredictability creates a survival response where your brain becomes hypervigilant to their moods, needs, and reactions. You become an expert on them while losing expertise on yourself. Your nervous system stays in constant fight or flight, addicted to the stress hormones the relationship produces. What feels like love is often just trauma dressed up in romance's clothing. Children who experience silent manipulation from parents develop complex PTSD. They can't point to specific abuse. There might not be yelling, hitting, or explicit cruelty. But the constant emotional unavailability, the withdrawn affection, the silent disapproval, the withheld praise, these create wounds that don't show but never heal. These children become adults who can't trust their own perceptions, who apologize for existing, who feel responsible for everyone's emotions. Workplace silent manipulation is epidemic. The boss who gives vague instructions then expresses disappointment at the results. The colleague who volunteers you for tasks without asking. The team that excludes you from informal communications then wonders why you're not aligned. The performance review that focuses on unmeasurable cultural fit rather than actual performance. You're left constantly anxious, never sure where you stand, always feeling slightly off balance. Some silent manipulators genuinely don't know they're doing it. They learned these patterns in their own traumatic childhoods. They're not consciously choosing manipulation. They're unconsciously repeating the only relationship patterns they know. This doesn't make the manipulation less damaging, but it explains why confronting them often leads to genuine confusion and denial. They literally can't see what they're doing. The recovery from silent manipulation is complex, because you're not recovering from what happened, but from what didn't happen. The conversations never had, the affection never given, the approval never granted, the clarity never provided. You're healing from absence, from void, from the ghosts of what should have been. How do you process trauma that was inflicted through withdrawal rather than action? Victims of silent manipulation often struggle to explain what happened to them. They sound paranoid, describing subtle patterns. They seem oversensitive, explaining minor incidents. They feel crazy trying to articulate how someone's silence destroyed them. This inability to name the abuse becomes part of the abuse, another layer of isolation and self-doubt. The digital age has created new frontiers for silent manipulation. Read receipts left unacknowledged. Messages typed, then deleted so you see the dots but never the words. Strategic likes and unlikes. Following and unfollowing. Being left unread. These might seem trivial, but they're powerful tools of psychological control, especially for younger generations who live much of their emotional lives online. Silent manipulation in groups is particularly insidious. The family that collectively ignores one member's achievements. The friend group that plans events through separate chats. The workplace that has informal meetings you're not invited to. You're not explicitly excluded. You're just not included. You're not directly attacked. You're just not defended. You exist in a state of present absence, there but not there, included but not really. The healing from silent manipulation starts with naming it, calling out the patterns, even if only to yourself, documenting incidents, not to prove anything to others but to validate your own experience. You're not crazy. You're not too sensitive. You're not imagining things. You're responding normally to abnormal treatment. Recovery requires rebuilding trust in your own perceptions. This is slow, difficult work. Every instinct has been trained to doubt yourself, to seek external validation, to assume you're wrong. Learning to trust your gut again feels like learning to walk after years in a wheelchair. Possible, necessary, but requiring patience and probably professional help. Setting boundaries with silent manipulators is uniquely challenging because they never directly cross them. They hover at the edge, testing, pushing slightly, retreating when challenged. They make boundary setting feel like overreaction. All I did was, I didn't mean. They make you the aggressor for having limits, the unreasonable one for expecting respect. Sometimes the only solution is complete disconnection, no contact. Not because you're weak, but because some people have turned manipulation into their primary way of relating. They can't turn it off any more than you can stop breathing. Staying in connection means staying in manipulation. Leaving feels like abandoning them, but it's actually choosing yourself. The most insidious aspect of silent manipulation is how it makes you complicit in your own destruction. You become the one enforcing the rules they never stated. You police yourself, punish yourself, limit yourself. They don't have to control you because you're controlling yourself on their behalf. You become both prisoner and guard in a jail they built, but you maintain. Understanding silent manipulation doesn't make you immune to it. These patterns work on unconscious levels, triggering primitive responses, exploiting psychological needs. Knowledge helps, but isn't complete protection. We all have vulnerabilities, wounds that make us susceptible to certain manipulations. The goal isn't invulnerability, but awareness, catching the manipulation earlier, responding more quickly, extracting yourself more efficiently. As you finish reading this, you might be recognizing patterns in your own relationships. The friend who always has emergencies when you have good news. The partner who withdraws when you need support. The parent who expresses love through worry and criticism. The boss who keeps you perpetually uncertain about your standing. These aren't necessarily evil people. They're often wounded people who learned that direct communication is dangerous, that needs must be met indirectly, that control is necessary for safety. But understanding the why doesn't diminish the what. Silent manipulation, regardless of its origin or intent, is a form of psychological violence. It erodes identity, destroys confidence, and fractures your relationship with reality. It's abuse in a whisper, trauma in negative space, violence through absence. The antidote to silent manipulation is conscious, direct communication. It's saying what you mean, asking for what you need, setting clear boundaries, and refusing to participate in psychological games. It's choosing relationships where you can be fully yourself, speak your truth, and trust that love doesn't require constant management. You deserve relationships where you're not constantly decoding, analyzing, walking on eggshells, where silence means peace, not punishment, where love is given freely, not rationed for control, where you can trust your perceptions, express your needs, and exist without apology. The silent manipulators in your life won't like this change. They'll escalate their tactics, play victim, recruit allies, or suddenly become the person you always wanted them to be, temporarily. This is extinction burst, the desperate increase in manipulation when it stops working. Hold steady. Your sanity, your identity, your life depends on breaking free from the silent war being waged against your mind. Remember, you're not too sensitive. You're not imagining things. You're not asking for too much. You're recognizing that someone is manipulating you so skillfully that you were trained to gaslight yourself on their behalf. Seeing it is the first step. Naming it is the second. Refusing to participate anymore is your liberation.